And it is the Saturday Coffee Klatch with Heather Lofthouse and yours truly, Robert Reich. Heather, how are you? I have to ask you this every week because I am suffering. Millions of other people are suffering getting through a week with Trump. How are you doing?
I'm suffering too. I mean, not as bad as many people out there, but it's not great. But when I meet with you, work with you, coffee with you, it makes it slightly better. So,
Well, I feel
do
the
I have
same
to give
way.
you a number?
Yeah. Well, last week you gave me 7.4, 7.5. I mean, you
7.8.
were way up there. I was way in the dregs. How
But
are you
I think,
today?
no, but I think I grade on a curve. You know, a C plus. I'm not excited about a C plus. I don't know, 7.2, C
That's
minus.
okay. That's really better than 90% of Americans
I
right
guess.
now.
Well, thank you. I mean, maybe
Even
I'm lying.
even
Might be lying.
even Trumpers are starting to feel discouraged and starting to have kind of this buyer's remorse, and we'll come to it. What else are we going to what are we going to talk about today?
Let's talk about Signalgate, Trump's attacks.
Signalgate.
Yep, Trump's attacks on students and lawyers, tariffs, and then we will also have an appearance from our colleague Vishal, who is on the ground in Wisconsin.
Yes, Wisconsin's going to be a big place, and Vish, we're very eager to hear from you. But first of all, Signalgate. Heather, what did you make of Signalgate? I have my views, but I want to hear yours.
It's unbelievable. It's unbelievable that it happened, and the response is unbelievable. I mean, unbelievable. Everything's believable, I guess. When everything is unbelievable, I feel like somehow it inverts into the believable. It's ridiculous, and the fact that no one has taken accountability, the complete, unrelenting denial of it all, floors me.
It floors me too. I mean, I have never seen or read about or witnessed an administration where there's this degree of incompetence. And I mean, it's beyond incompetence. We're talking about potential lives being lost because of this. It's not, and people call it a gaffe. It's not a gaffe. It really is a huge national security mistake. And yet nobody's head is rolling. Nobody's fired. There's no explanation. Still no explanation for what happened, why it happened. I mean, it really is weird. And this is, the larger frame of reference here is that this administration is comprised of people who don't know anything about governing America, governing this country, and you see it. That I mean, Signalgate is one example, but we're going to go through. You listed several examples of things that just are so stupid. I mean, just absolutely dumb. They would never be done by even a halfway competent administration.
And the fact that the people in charge of American military people's lives, right? But then also so many other people's lives with their hands on these weapons are shocked. And I mean, I don't even know how a text group happened. I mean, you add someone's name accidentally. So then you say, whoops, that was wrong. Or you blame a staffer and you handle it. I mean, it's just the fact that it's just unhandled
And
yeah.
it's just the little. I mean, you read through this transcript, and you can't believe what they're doing. First of all, they're violating international law. I mean, quite explicitly. I mean, you're not supposed to be identifying and targeting very specific people globally that you are killing in such an obvious, blatant manner. The Geneva Accords prohibit that, but also the emojis. I mean, can you imagine doing foreign policy via emoji? I mean,
Well, we don't have to imagine it. We witnessed it. I mean, it's tragic. It's awful. And to just have no one, I don't know, own it,
nobody
just adds to
responsible.
it.
Heather,
Yep.
nobody responsible.
I know it.
And
I
Trump
know it.
originally saying, Waltz learns his lesson. Well, nobody's learned any lesson here whatsoever. The only lesson that the American public has learned is that these people don't know how to fight their way out of a paper bag. They don't know how to run anything.
And they also, this feigned mystery around how it happened is so unattractive. It's so inappropriate. It's so obscene. That's what kills me. Okay, so one person from Signalgate, at least, J.D. Vance has been in Greenland as of yesterday. Greenland. You say Greenland. I say Greenland.
Greenland.
That's interesting.
we're gonna, and the idea, what are we going to do with Greenland? This is another example of kind of a Signalgate incompetence. We're saying we're going to take over Greenland, and we're sending the vice president to Greenland to take over Greenland. Heather, did you hear about all the MAGA hats that are being sold in Greenland, with MAGA meaning, make America go away?
I know.
Make America go away.
I know. I think a lot of people would buy that hat right now. Okay, we have some positive things. We do, but we can't get to them yet. So let's just take off the Band-Aid and let's keep going. So a lot of students have been detained, many more, and Marco Rubio has said up to 300 around that, and he's doing it every time he sees someone, some lunatic that needs to be detained, who has violated whatever he thinks they have violated. And so we had a new example this week out of Tufts, which so many of us saw the video of, which didn't happen with Mahmoud Khalil. So that was scary. You saw that video, didn't you?
Well, it's absolutely chilling because you have plainclothes people, HHS, ICE people. Actually, there is a difference between Homeland Security and immigration, and Marco Rubio's HHS. But you get these people who are unmarked, don't have any insignia. They're in black. They have hoods, and they come up and they say you are going to be detained. They don't say arrested. They say you're going to be detained, and they handcuff these people and they send them off.
Yeah, Ramesa Ozturk is her name. Yeah, and I saw plainclothes people. I mean, apparently they had badges, but it's very jarring to watch it instead of just to read about it. I found too.
This is what a tin pan dictatorship would do in terms of disappearing people. I mean, this is happening. This happened in Somerville, Massachusetts, right next to Cambridge, Massachusetts. It's part of the Boston metropolitan area. These things are happening in New York. They're happening all over America.
DC,
and Washington D.C. And if you're an international student, what do you think right now? Supposing you have a green card, or even if you don't, supposing you have a student visa, are you going to be confident? No. Are you going to go home and visit your family for the holidays? You better not, because you may not get back into the United States. Are you going to take part in a protest? Are you going to put your name on even an article that has 3 or 4 other people on the article that is critical of the administration or critical of the president of Tufts or anybody else who's in power?
Op-ed, opinion editorial. Opinion.
This is the big chill. This is what the administration wants. The administration wants to chill all dissent. And whether you are, and Heather, it doesn't matter whether you are a visitor here in the United States. I mean, there's no due process, which means it could be anybody. They say they deported a bunch of Venezuelans who were dangerous. How do we know they're dangerous? How do we even know they're Venezuelans? How do we know they're not Americans? I mean, there has been no judicial review of any transcript. All we have are the allegations from this administration. And this administration has lied through its teeth more than any other administration in history. So how can you trust their allegations?
And assertions. It's assertion after assertion. And there's so much more to be revealed. What about the lawyers? So it's not just students. We've seen so much this week around law firms and lawyers in particular in terms of security clearances being pulled and deals being made and people scared to represent a variety of clients. What do you think?
Well, the way the press, the way the media is playing this, it's about Trump's vindictiveness toward these law firms, because one law firm had somebody who later was part of a prosecution team against Trump, and another law firm had somebody who in the first Trump administration was helping target Trump. But it's not just vindictiveness. what Trump is doing is similar to what he's doing with these students, setting a chill, creating a deterrence. These law firms don't want to, in the future, hire anybody who has been critical of the administration. These law firms are saying to their partners and their associates, don't go and help criticize. Don't do anything that is critical of the administration. Don't put your name on anything that is critical of the administration. We could lose our access to government buildings. We could lose our access to federal courts. We could lose all of our assets. So don't do anything that is remotely possible of criticizing and getting Trump angry. This is what, Heather, everybody is worried about. Everybody is worried. Go to Columbia University, go to the president's office, go to every university president's office, go to these major law firms in this country, Paul Weiss, everybody. They're all worried about Trump's vindictiveness and anger. They don't want to do anything in advance that's going to anger him, which means you have this extraordinary suppression of dissent. A lot of people don't realize that some of the law cases that are now winding their way through the federal courts that are challenging Trump's executive orders started as pro bono, that is, free cases by these major law firms, because public interest groups came to the law firms and say, can you help us? Can you help us? Well, now these law firms don't want to have anything to do with any of those pro bono cases in the future. They don't want to, again, risk the wrath of Trump.
It's so terrifying. And all these executive orders, I mean, there were so many this past week. It's hard to keep track of them all. But so what is going to happen with the executive orders? So we have cases against many of them saying they're unconstitutional or illegal in various ways. Are those going to play out? What's going to happen with them?
Well, they're going to play out. They'll move. They're right. Most of them now are at the district court level. Many of them are injunctions against the administration moving forward. So far, the administration, the regime, I'm going to call it the regime, the Trump regime, has not told the courts that it's going to disregard what the courts are going to be doing. And this is what the big, was with Boasberg and the District of Columbia District Court. This is the drama that's going on. But at least for now, Trump is saying, no, we are not going to disobey orders of the federal court. So, yes, you have right now, those orders are moving their way up to the courts of appeals, and some of them eventually will get to the Supreme Court, but they are outrageously illegal and unconstitutional. I mean, many of them. For example, one of the first ones that Trump signed said there is no birthright citizenship in the United States. In other words, if you are a child born in the United States to people who are international or came here without the right papers, you cannot be a citizen. Well, that's crazy. The Constitution is very detailed, very specific about anybody born here is a citizen. So these things are going to go up to the Supreme Court or the courts of appeals.
And then what happens with the Supreme Court?
That's the interesting question. Supposing the Supreme Court, on a very important case that Trump cares a lot about, says, no, Trump, you are wrong, you cannot move forward with this. Then the question is whether Trump does what J.D. Vance has urged him to do in the past, which is to say, the Supreme Court has made its ruling, now let them try to enforce it. Then we are in the midst of what is called a constitutional crisis. I hope it doesn't come to that, but it may come to that.
I mean, of course. And some people say we're in a constitutional crisis already. But in terms of these executive orders, I mean, there was one about voting rights, right, and returning things to the states, allegedly, taking away. Yeah, exactly.
You have to
mail.
I mean, you have to prove that you're a United States citizen before you can vote. But Congress is in charge, and the states, Congress and the states are in charge of deciding who can vote, not the President of the United States.
Right.
You can't do that by executive order. That's called a dictatorship. And
But then at the Department of Education, we're saying return everything to the states. So we don't trust the states on this one, but we do trust the states on that one. I mean,
there's
it feels...
don't even, Heather, don't look for any coherent
logic.
logic here. I mean, you majored in logic as an undergraduate, didn't you?
I studied logic, yeah.
You did? Well, there's no logic here. I mean, Trump did not study logic.
I did the derivation.
It's just whatever he feels like doing and whatever he thinks is going to look good on television, he will do. But the point is that he's also following the playbook of dictators. This is exactly what we have seen from Putin. This is what we've seen from Erdogan in Turkey. This is what we see from in Hungary from Viktor Orban. All of these attacks on individual freedom to speak out, to do it, and without worry that they're going to be, that there will be people in who will be masked or in suits coming up and basically whisking you off to detention, and also universities and also law firms and attacks on lawyers. We see this. This is what every authoritarian, totalitarian dictatorship has done, going right back to Hitler and Mussolini and Stalin. This is not new, and I don't know why there is not more reference to this being the dictator's playbook. This is what Trump is doing.
What about the executive order yesterday that was taking away bargaining power, or attempting to, from tons of federal workers? So it expanded the list. So it would include, I think it was up to a million federal workers.
Yes, and there are 2.3 million federal workers. So you're talking about half of all federal workers lose their bargaining rights. And those bargaining rights really stem from the 1970s. When the federal government, Congress, and the president in the 1970s decided that federal workers should be able to have bargaining rights, not quite as strong as in the private sector, but they are significant, and boom, Trump takes them away with an executive order. This is like what dictators use diktats. This is like a diktat.
Boom. That's a Reichism. I love when you do that.
Boom. Heather.
I rue the day when, I miss the day, I guess. I don't rue the day. I mean, this is like the great disappearing feels like could be the name of what we're living through. And I feel like at one point that was just a bad Penn and Teller act in Vegas. That was my joke. Did it help?
The great disappearing.
Trying to lighten things up.
It's funny if it weren't so tragic. And it's important to try to find humor here. But this is a national emergency. I have never lived through anything like this. I was born, I'm much older than you are. I was born in 1946, as was Donald Trump, as was George W. Bush, as was Bill Clinton. This entire group of baby boomers came after the Holocaust, after the Second World War, after the worst had been done in terms of what we saw of fascism. So none of us has a direct experience. We all heard about this. We learned about it. And way after the fact, we learned about Stalin and what Stalin did. But we have never lived anything like this.
So we're suffering through, and some suffering more than others, through this dictatorship. What is happening with the economy? So at the same time that there's all this terrifying power grabs and legalities that we're all watching, and illegalities, the economy, so one executive order from the past week was related to tariffs, right? Imposing a 25% tariff on imported automobiles. The economy's already reeling from that. What else has been happening?
Let me just remind you and everybody else who's watching, tariffs used to be the province of Congress. Do you remember? NAFTA, the North American Free Trade Act, had to be approved by Congress. When there was a major tariff change, that Congress used to be in the middle of that. Trump says, no, I'm not going to pay attention to Congress. I can make these decisions by myself, and I can put a 25% tariff on basically everything coming in from Mexico and from Canada, and I can wreck the automobile industry.
And Europe.
And Japan,
right.
yeah. I mean, this is, talk about dictatorship. The economy is already reeling from this. He says we are going to raise enough money, $100 billion, he says, we're going to raise from these tariffs. Just the auto tariffs alone, he says, $100 billion just from the auto tariffs alone. But look at what has happened to the capitalization, the value of the auto companies over the last month and a half. They have lost more than $100 billion in their capitalization, in their value. So here is Trump saying we're going to get $100 billion, the United States Treasury, and these auto companies have already lost $100 billion, and American taxpayers and American consumers are going to be paying through the nose for automobiles. I mean, already automobile costs are going up, and even the secondary market, Heather, the used cars, their prices are going up because if you can't get a new car, you go to the used car, and the demand for used cars is increasing.
That's it. You were around you referenced Congress, who used to get involved with these things, but a lot of tariffs, what can we learn from the 80s and 90s?
Well, what we can learn, and certainly, I mean, we don't have to go to the 80s and 90s. We can go back to the Smoot-Hawley tariff of 1930.
And just some econ books, by the way.
Which was a generalized, I mean, the last time we had a generalized tariff on everything was Smoot-Hawley. That was 1930. Congressman Smoot, Congressman Hawley, they decided that the American economy would be better off if you put a tariff on everything. And that plunged us even deeper into the Great Depression of the 1930s. It made everything even worse. Everything became much more expensive. Tariffs, if they're carefully fashioned, if they're targeted to particular goods and services like semiconductors. Well, if the United States is investing in semiconductor production, a tariff might be perfectly appropriate. But doing a tariff on everything is crazy. It's crazy. Given what we know about tariffs, it's absolutely nuts.
Right. And this is supposedly going to go into effect April 3rd. We have other tariffs also going into effect April 2nd, which people have called Liberation Day, by the way.
This is next
confidence.
Week. Yeah. This coming week.
Yeah.
This coming week. And already, I mean, consumer confidence has plummeted.
Yep.
Consumer confidence is down. The lowest it has been actually consistently now in 12 years. And with consumer confidence plummeting, that prices are going up. And also we have a more than 50-50 chance of stagflation. That is the combination of inflation and a recession. And the problem with stagflation, the last time we had it was during the Carter years. The problem with stagflation is that we don't have the equipment. We don't have, the Fed doesn't know how to deal with stagflation. We don't have a way of getting out of stagflation. So when I said before that many people who voted for Trump because they thought Trump was going to fix the economy are now feeling some degree of buyer's remorse because he's not fixing the economy. He's making the economy far worse.
And his approval ratings are negative by all pollsters. I mean, they're not favorable, which you've put in your Seeds of Hope, which you've been noting in your Seeds of Hope.
Well, it's a Seeds of Hope, but it's also sad. I mean, it's because a lot of people are going to suffer. They're already suffering. When the economy goes bad, I mean, the first people who are drafted into the fight against inflation and the first people who lose their jobs when the economy goes bad are people who are working class and poor. And many of these people are Trump voters. And now he's going to make up something. He's going to say, as he has already said, don't worry about it. Everything's going to be fine in the long term. Well,
Yep.
as the famous economist John Maynard Keynes said, in the long term, we're all dead.
This is the worst coffee clutch we've had in a long time. I'm leaving.
No. That was, I don't mean to be downbeat.
Okay, let's restart. So, in other bad news, Social Security this week. I mean, there is a lot of dismantling happening. I mean, I saw yesterday something about they're going to change the programming language and use AI instead. And there was a quote, we can show the clip if we want to, of Commerce Secretary Lutnick referencing crassly his mother-in-law and the fact that if she missed her Social Security check for a week, big deal. She would just expect it would come some other week or something. She wouldn't miss it.
You mean the mother of a billionaire doesn't have to worry about Social Security?
Ding, 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 ding. Boom. Boom, as you would say.
Let's say Social Security didn't send out their checks this month. My mother-in-law, who's 94, she wouldn't call and complain. She just wouldn't. She'd think something got messed up, and she'll get it next month.
Yeah.
A fraudster always makes the loudest noise, screaming, yelling, and complaining.
Wow.
A fraudster. I mean, how many millions of people are dependent on their Social Security checks? They have paid into Social Security for their entire working lives. And he's saying if only fraudsters complain if they don't get their Social Security check, how out of touch can anybody be, Heather?
Well,
this is
really
the equivalent of Signalgate.
I know. Okay, so with this, I think what we should do now is we have a colleague who you all have met, people watching, listening, have met him before, Vishal Shankar. He's on our team. He's a researcher. He is the one that dives into the archives for us and finds clips that I torture you with, Bob. And Vishal is reporting in from Wisconsin, and he's here for us to ask a number of questions about the upcoming Supreme Court race that is happening there. Welcome, Vish.
Thanks, Bob. Thanks, Heather. Pleasure to be back on the Klatch. I've got my coffee. And we're going to be talking about my state, Wisconsin, once again at the center of the political universe.
Good. Why should we be so concerned about the Wisconsin Supreme Court race? I mean, we're not in Wisconsin. Who cares?
Yeah, I mean, that's an excellent question. This race has drawn a lot of national attention, I think, for a couple of reasons. One, this is a major swing state. This race could be a key bellwether, a key indicator of the national mood against the Trump-Musk Doge regime. For another, whoever wins this race, whether it's the conservative right-wing Republican-backed candidate Brad Schimmel or the more liberal Susan Crawford, their ideological wing of the court is going to have the majority for at least the next year. Control of the court's majority is up for grabs, and there are a lot of big cases that could come before the court in that time. Things like abortion rights, union rights, gerrymandering and redistricting, even looking all the way ahead to the next presidential election. I mean, in 2020, when Trump tried to overturn the results here in Wisconsin, the state Supreme Court rejected his lawsuit by just one vote. And I think maybe the last reason, and we'll get into this in a little bit, this is now, I checked the numbers from the Brennan Center, the most expensive judicial election in American history. $80 million spent, $20 million of which coming from co-president Elon Musk.
Just wanted to make sure that I understood and everybody else who's watching understands. You're saying that this Supreme Court race, the reason that Musk is pouring so much money into this, the reason we should be so concerned about this is because the Supreme Court justice really does, in a way, determine the majority on the court. But ultimately, this is one of the most important states in terms of kind of determining who's going to be president in 2028. And so we need a state, a Wisconsin state that has, with a Supreme Court that is going to make the districts, the voting districts, fair and not weigh it in favor of Republicans.
Absolutely. I mean, you nailed it, Bob. And Musk and his super PACs are going to all sorts of crazy tactics to try and swing this election. I mean, they're literally doing these $100, $1 million giveaways to voters, which I'm frankly floored. I don't know how that's not illegal. But I do think there are two main reasons why Elon Musk is intervening so heavily in this race. The first and foremost being that I think he wants to be the preeminent new political power broker in American politics. If you recall, he has threatened Republican members of Congress and even some Democrats. He said, if you stand in the way of Trump's agenda, of my agenda, I am going to spend millions of dollars to personally drive you out of office. And so if Brad Schimmel wins on Tuesday, Musk is going to have a lot of ammunition to turn around to these doubters and say, my money made the difference here. Either get behind me or I'm going to make sure that you don't have a job pretty soon. In a way, he is essentially doing for Republicans what the Israel lobby and the crypto lobby have been doing on the Democratic side for the last few cycles now, which is spending ungodly sums of money to drive out anyone who opposes their agenda. So that is one reason he wants to be a power broker. But there is a second reason, and this is going to shock you, I'm sure, and that is self-enrichment. Currently, there is a lawsuit filed by Tesla against the state of Wisconsin over a state law prohibiting auto manufacturers from opening dealerships and selling direct-to-consumer. And if this law works its way through the court system, this lawsuit eventually makes its way up to the state Supreme Court, and it's overturned, let's say by Justice Brad Schimmel, this would be a huge increase to the profits of Tesla and Musk. And this is not, coming out of nowhere. They waged a very similar case in Delaware just 2 years ago to get a state law like that overturned. So as always with Musk, there is the public side of things, the political power broker side, and there's also the corrupt self-dealing.
How many votes did Trump win by? 27,000?
Something in that range. I don't have the exact number on me, but it was a razor-thin close election. And I should mention this. When that lawsuit came to the state Supreme Court, seeking to overturn the results in Wisconsin, the state Supreme Court rejected it by just one vote. We came within one vote of losing democracy here in the state of Wisconsin. So, you look ahead to 2028, say J.D. Vance or Donald Trump Jr., or God forbid Donald Trump again somehow try to pull a similar election subversion stunt, you could easily see a magnified state Supreme Court with Brad Schimmel, who is an open Trump supporter, has appeared at his rallies and Republican events, even dressed up as Donald Trump for Halloween this past year. It's not a joke. You could see the state Supreme Court going along with such a scheme.
Is Musk's investment, $20 million in this race, a major factor in the race?
Absolutely. Like we mentioned earlier, $80 million and counting in this race. So about 1/4 of that is coming from the richest man on the planet. And we mentioned sort of the reasons why he's spending so much money. But I also think, the Republicans really need this injection of money to be competitive in this race, because when you look at the grassroots energy, the momentum against Musk and Doge and everything that they're doing, the grassroots momentum is not on their side. And the real challenge for them, for the Schimmel campaign, is going to be, can we turn out the MAGA base and the people who voted for Donald Trump in November? Can we turn them out at similar or the same margins as we did just a couple months ago? Because if they can't, Brad Schimmel really doesn't have a path to victory. This is something that Musk's own super PAC has admitted in internal memos. And I think on the flip side, you're seeing encouraging signs for the Crawford campaign. The momentum is very clearly on their side. People are fired up, not just against what Musk and Doge and Trump are doing, but they've been fired up for a while since the Dobbs ruling back in 2022. You've seen Democratic turnout consistently exceed expectations in these special elections and off-cycle elections. So I think 2025 is not going to be like 2024. And hopefully you're going to see that on Tuesday.
Musk's influence is terrifying. So we'll have to see what happens on Tuesday. What else? What other elections are happening on Tuesday? You're our go-to for elections in many ways. Vish, what should we be paying attention to?
I mean, that's a great question. Well, here in Wisconsin, it's not just the state Supreme Court election. We've also got a big race for state superintendent of public instruction. There's a constitutional amendment ballot question. There are several school district races and county executives. But, I don't want to just talk about Wisconsin. I wouldn't normally mention this, but there are two big races going on in Florida. Congressional special elections for seats that have been vacated in districts that Trump won by double digits in November. By two people whose lives I assume are going swimmingly since they left Congress, Matt Gaetz and Michael Waltz. But again, normally you wouldn't think about these races because you think, oh, it's a sure deal for the Republicans. They're going to easily win this. Not according to reporting from this week. Apparently, Republicans are sweating bullets, particularly about the race in Florida's 6th congressional district, where there are severe concerns about the candidate quality for the candidate they've nominated, State Senator Randy Fine. And also very lackluster fundraising numbers that he's put up. So if you're in Florida's 6th congressional district, where polling from the Republicans themselves has indicated this race is competitive, you can vote for Democrat Josh Weil, who is going up against the Republican Randy Fine. And if you're in Florida's 1st congressional district, that's the Gates district, you can vote for Democrat Gay Vallimont. And both of these candidates, I should emphasize, are running on opposition to the damage that Musk and Doge are doing to Social Security and the Veterans Administration. So, it's part of this larger trend.
And what about the special elections that just happened in Pennsylvania? That was interesting to see.
This Pennsylvania special election that just happened this past week, this was for a state Senate election in a seat that Trump won by double digits in November. Democrats have not held this seat for 189 years. The Democratic candidate won this race, and he won the race running on opposition to the damage that Musk and Doge are doing to things like Social Security and Medicare and Medicaid. He literally campaigned on tying his Republican opponent to Elon Musk, and this is the result. So clearly something big is happening. I think this is something you're going to see on Tuesday as well.
That is fabulous news. Or at least fabulous forecasting.
I agree. So Vish, one of his main jobs is to have memorized and categorized all archival related to inequality, basically. Let's leave it at that. So you found recently a clip of Robert Reich and Donna Shalala, then Secretary of HHS, talking about Wisconsin. Should we look really quickly?
And people don't really know this, was in coming up with the tough new state slogan in Wisconsin, eat cheese or die. You see it on the license plates out there now. It's a powerful, it's really brings tears to people's eyes. And now that she is Secretary of HHS, her public health slogan is eat cheese and die. Same thrust, but a slightly different message.
Well, thank you for your time today, Vish. This was incredibly helpful.
Vish, thanks again, and thanks for being on the ground in Wisconsin at this critical time.
My pleasure, guys. I tip my hat to you for having me on the Klatch.
Any last words, Heather Loftus,
yes,
you'd like to share with us?
We have to have some good news. We try to pepper a little bit of comedy in there, a little bit of reporting. I don't know. It's a casual conversation, as we know, but we have to end with good news.
Here's the good news, and I think Vish gave us some good news, that is there is a great deal of pent up demand for voting against this regime, this Trump Musk regime. And we're seeing it all over the country. I mean, Bernie Sanders last weekend was out in Colorado. 34,000 people turned out to see him and AOC. 34,000. This was more people than had ever turned out when Bernie Sanders was running for president. The polls are showing that Bernie is still the most popular Democrat and most popular Democratic politician, even though he's not a Democrat, the most popular politician out there.
That's it. And for some context, he's up by 7 points. Trump is -5. I mean, and you put this in your Substack yesterday, and the Dems are at -30, whatever it is, 35.
Well, I think the good news is that people are becoming activist. They don't like what's going on. They're showing up. They are going to be demonstrating on the 5th of April. There's a massive demonstration planned all over the country. And I think that, the fever may be breaking, the Trump fever. I mean, I'm going to be optimistic about that.
I like to hear that. Also, a couple good wins in the courts. I really do think the courts are so critically important. We keep talking about them every single week, and there were some good wins this week. We had, a temporary restraining order stopping ICE from detaining one student, and federal judges blocking the Trump administration from banning transgender people in the military. So a few wins on the court side of things, too, which you've also been noting on Substack.
And I think that's important to keep in mind. I mean, the Republicans in the House are talking about getting rid of the district court's jurisdiction. I mean, think of that. Think how spooked they must be. Now, it's never going to go through because obviously the Senate is not going to support that. But think of how utterly spooked the administration is, the regime, and the Republicans to even come up with something like that, taking away the jurisdiction of the district courts. So there is a lot to hold on to here. All is not lost. Heather Lofthouse, thank you for your continue great work. Inequality Media Civic Action. Thank you for all your work there and your work here on our Coffee Klatch. And everybody out there, thank you for hanging in. It's tough, I understand, but we will be victorious. Thanks.